Well, welcome everyone to the Aquarian series put on by the United Lodge of Theosophists here in San Diego. And we have all of us who are in virtual land attending from all over this country and Canada and the Netherlands and Hawaii, which is this country. I do know that. Anyway, Um, so yeah, I'm just people are coming in from North Carolina, just everywhere. But welcome everyone to our very exciting and it's going to be very interesting topic of called electricity. And Desiree Van Sannen is our speaker today. Okay, so here's the flyer for today, and it's on electricity. And I'll just read out the quote from Hermes for the week on looks like Fohad here. Sages act like Fohad, tirelessly working to bring together and disperse endlessly changing and evolving modes and structures, which can further the process of soul evolution. Here, and I am going to turn this meeting over to Desiree.
So we heard from Jonathan regarding our saying for the day: sages act like Fohat, tirelessly working to bring together and disperse endlessly changing and evolving modes and structures, which can further the process of soul evolution. I'd just like to add that we are all Fohatic beings. We all come from that natural Fohatic motion. And when you think about it, as learning entities, we have to take things apart to study them. And in doing so, as we study the parts, we begin, not always successfully, but we try to put them back together. So, in this regard, because we're learning entities and because the process is all about learning, we have to take on that Fohatic behavior. And we do it naturally. Children do it. Children always ask why when they don't understand something. The first things they do when they have a toy, oftentimes, is they pull it apart to find out how all the individual parts work. And we're just like that. How many times do we have a mystery and we just have to solve it? That's Fohatic. And it's natural. I wanted to put this particular picture on the first slide because it shows the earth on fire with electricity. And later on, I'm going to show a similar picture toward the end against another picture. It'll be of the brain also on fire with electricity. And I want you to take notice of just how similar they look. So we'll go through a few topics really briefly. What is electricity, conventionally speaking? How we interact with it today. We're going to be hearing some voices from silence and also their evolving theories. We're going to be also talking a little bit about the electric universe. Also monism as opposed to monotheism. I'll be reading from the book, The One, from Heinrich Paz. And then we're going to get into some more esoteric conversations regarding electricity and Fohat. And then there'll be a brief summary. Put this out of the way. So for starters, I want to read this one phrase. It basically, when people ask me about life and spirit and things like that, I always tell them, if it wasn't for the things we can't see, we would not have an ounce of anything we can see. Just to get minds thinking about everything that is flowing between us, through us, and that connects us. All of life, known and unknown, is powered by energy. From the atom to the grand universe, in every direction, mode, and plane, motion and energy pervades, penetrates, modulates, and expresses all. Like the world around us, energy is constantly on the move and constantly changing and interpenetrating. It is the great creator and sustainer of life as we know it, and the atom is its dutiful builder. The form of the atom shows us the finer archetypes that are the representatives at the very heart and harmony of this process. The repulsive, attracting, and cohesive forces operating in balance and in accordance with natural laws are agents of an internal, external, and eternal system, one that we are just beginning to understand. And in the words of Albert Einstein, the knowledge about man is still in its infancy. So the curiosity about electricity goes back quite a ways. It was recognized by ancient Mediterranean cultures that certain stones and minerals contained properties that produced electric or magnetic effects, and that amber, when rubbed, could produce static electricity. And I think HBB talks about this quite a bit. It would take a millennium or so later when, in 1600, the scientist William Gilbert coined the term electricus, a Neo-Latin word meaning of amber, and after the Greek, electron for amber or amber-like. And beyond being a mere curiosity, the effects of electricity were often used medicinally to treat many ailments, such as headaches, gout, digestive issues, as well as some mental disorders. So the study of optics, light, and of instruments using light began in 300 BC in Euclid's Law of Reflection, although the development and use of mirrors and their reflective properties existed in early Egypt as far back as 2000 BC. Conventionally speaking, and this is just a very sterile, if you were to open up a dictionary and look and see, this is kind of what you would read about electricity, a phenomena of energy characterized by the presence and motion of elementary charged particles. There are two types of electricity, static and current. The electric field is produced by stationary charges, and the magnetic field by moving charges, and that's referred to as electric currents. We talked about energy in the previous slide. Well, in the dictionary, you might find something like this for energy: the capacity or potential to do work. The energy stored in an object is known as potential energy. For instance, heat is the transfer of kinetic energy from one medium or object to another, or from an energy source to a medium or object. And so let's talk about work a little bit. What makes work different? So energy can be put in storage, but that cannot be done for work. Work is energy in motion. Energy alters from one form to another by the process of doing work. So we could kind of look at it as a threefold process if we would like. Energy being the capacity to do work. It can be stored. Electricity as a medium of sorts, which connects the energy to its object, which is the action. This is just one way of looking at it. But when I think about something being stored or having the capacity to be stored, one of the thoughts that rolls through my mind is karma, because karma can also be stored. So when we think of these terms, we also want to see how can we engage these more conventional understandings with the esoteric, even if we're just playing with it. Sometimes these ideas do correspond. So for practical purposes, we use electricity for many things. And there's a few things that are mentioned here. But when we think about it, our every motion is involved with the electrical process. It is all around us. And all we're doing here is using a medium so that we can act, so that we have heating, cooling, lighting, and all these other industries. There's no industry that works without electricity. And when we think about it, our whole body is an industry in of itself, a system of itself that operates off of electricity. Our body is an electric body, and in so it is a receiver and a transmitter. Life is not a closed system. Well, let me go back. Hold on. Sorry, I tried to let somebody in and I ended up going to the next slide. Everything we do is enabled and modulated by electrical signals running through the bodies of minerals, plants, and animals and planetary systems alike. As bodies, we are collections of huge aggregates of atoms, and as such, we generate, send, and receive information through a vast, unseen network. The human body at rest produces around 100 watts of power, which is enough electricity to power up a light bulb. Some humans have the ability to output over 2,000 watts of power. So, thoughts in of themselves are energy, and they also have an enormous influence on the frequency of the electric body. And there's been many studies in neuropsychology and how this frequency shifts during certain states, whether it be an agitated state or a meditative calm state. The heart's sinoatrial node, SI node, generates an electrical charge at least 1 per second, normally 60 to 80 beats per minute, for an average of 72 or 432 beats per hour. That's 72 beats per minute or 432 beats per hour. This is an interesting number because that's a number tied to the yugas or our celestial movements, among other numerical patterns in nature. These impulses are the sparks that cause the right atrium to contract, and it is this electrical impulse that sets the rhythm of the heart. And so when we think of the logoic heart and the flash, when we think of that desire that rose in it, there's so many applications that we can use here that are related to the physical heart that are also related to the logoic heart. It's an interesting fact that I pulled up. From the point of that spark in the heart that sets the whole contraction, expansion, and process, there's 7 steps from the blood flowing into the lungs. So, and then there's 7 steps, transitions that blood makes going from the lungs to the rest of the body. I thought that was interesting that there's 7 here and there's 7 there. And if other people are interested, I would just suggest pulling up the slide if they want to, or just looking it up online. So I said earlier, the whole universe is electric. Nikola Tesla said, "We are now confident that the electric and magnetic phenomena are attributable to ether. And we are perhaps justified in saying that the effects of static electricity are effects of ether under strain, and those of dynamic electricity and electromagnetism, effects of ether in motion." And it's funny because prior to Einstein, the idea of an electric universe and an ether flowing through the universe or inherent in the universe was actually highly accepted. And it was only until, but after Einstein and his theorems on relativity came into play, that all the attention, institutional attention and money and funding and literature that came out more or less poo-pooed anything having to do with an electric universe or the plasma field or anything like that. And so I think science really missed a great opportunity to answer a lot of the questions that are arising right now, especially with the James Webb Telescope that's producing some interesting photographs that science cannot really explain. And here we have an example of Tesla's plasma ball. So there is an effort underway, a growing kind of a grassroots effort. It has to be grassroots because, like I said, there's no institutional funding for these types of ideas anymore. But there's a group called the Thunderbolt of the Gods. It's being headed by Wallace Thornhill and Dave Talbot. Wallace died a few months back. Dave's still on board with this project, and there's many, especially a lot of young people that are joining up. And they are the ones that are really pushing the idea of an electric universe. Here's a few words from Wallace. From the smallest particle to the largest galactic formation, a web of electrical circuitry connects and unifies all of nature, organizing galaxies, energizing stars, giving birth to planets and to our own world, controlling weather and animating islands in an electric universe. I predict that when the James Webb Stellar Telescope or Space Telescope, with its vast improvement in sensitivity and resolution, will reveal the existence of the connecting network of helically can't say it, twisted filamentary pairs and braids even more clearly. And voila, it did. And here they are. So the James Webb Telescope has detected the electric double-stranded braided filaments in space, as Thornhill predicted, connecting and feeding the formation of galaxies and galactic families. And he does refer to the galaxies as having families, which I think is so precious, and giving birth to baby G's. Those are baby galaxies. If you look at the filament in here, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but you can see that right within these braids, stars are being formed. And what's further interesting, well, you can see them all throughout. But if you look at the far right on the bottom, the red helix. Now, I was watching a video of Wallace, one of Wallace's videos, and he was saying these things in motion are actually spitting out these. They almost look like little eggs. It reminds me of fish. Have you ever seen fish when they're getting ready to lay eggs? They kind of flap around that back tail, and the eggs fly out. So I had this vision with, just imagining what these beautiful structures are giving birth to and the way they're doing that. These pictures are amazing. So Wallace goes on to write that the 99% of the physical universe is made up of plasma. And I just wrote in here, well, what's that? The phenomena seen in the universe, thanks to the James Webb Telescope, cannot be explained by conventional physics and calls for a new wave of thought. The new thought will have great implications on astrophysics, plasma physics, and mythology, as it serves to synthesize them into one universal concept. I'm very appreciative of Wallace bringing in mythology, and not just mythology per se, but bringing in the stories of our indigenous people that have been overlooked over time, that they have a lot to contribute to our study of the universe. He goes on to say, astronomers working closely with gravitational formulas did not imagine the pervasive magnetic fields found in deep space. These magnetic fields are responsible for the braided filaments, which are found throughout space and which resemble transmission wires. So here's an example of what they somewhat look like. These are called Brickland currents, and they actually look like transmission wires. It's quite interesting. Only electric currents create magnetic fields, and all of space is teeming with them. The concept of a true vacuum in space has been debunked. Although denied by current science, the concept of an electric universe is gaining momentum among lay people who, up till now, could not understand the complexities and competing formula around classical and quantum mechanics. The electric universe provides an explanation that is both universal and simple, simple enough for a child to grasp. Here's another thing that the electric universe uh, theory has come out with. It was Ralph Jurgens back in 72 who noticed that the known characteristics of the interplanetary medium suggest not only that the sun and planets are electrically charged, but that the sun itself is the focus of a cosmic electric discharge, the probable source of all its radiant energy. This is in contrast to the nuclear fusion idea that is, I guess, the current standard. They write that the hottest part of the sun isn't close to its core, it's in its corona, thousands of miles above its surface. When there's a hole in the photosphere that we can peek through, there's nothing to suggest that there's anything going on underneath. So you would figure that if there was this great engine going on, that it would be brighter inside, not darker. Excuse me. Sunspots are black and cool compared to the photosphere. This is all indicative of electricity. A big difference in voltage potential can accelerate charged particles to enormous speeds, making them increasingly hot as they accelerate towards space and toward Earth. A surface bombarded by charged particles can get so hot that it melts. It appears that the current that created the solar system in the first place continues to flow, and that this current powers our sun. This is directly, this could have been in the Sacred Doctrine. So I know that HPB has always said the inside of the sun is cool. It's the outside the sun that's hot. And how she would know that when the science of today doesn't know that. So I just want to give some credit to some of our scientists over the years, just briefly. And I'm not trying to focus on any one particular scientist, but I do want to pay attention to the evolution of ideas because they are tending toward unification. I think that's ever since the scientific revolution. Our science has been trying to figure out a unified theory. And so I just want to kind of focus on the actual theories, not so much the people, because they were up against the politics of their day and the religion of their day. But anyway, Galileo, let's give him some credit. He's one of the first to propose the laws of the universe are based on a mathematical language characterized by triangles, circles, and other geometric figures. He wasn't the first. He was a proponent of the Copernican heliocentric system, and he was shunned by scientists of the day and was labeled a heretic by the church. But he is still referred to as the father of modern science. Isaac Newton, in his Principia Mathematica, established classical mechanics and formulated the laws of motion and universal gravitation, and he's considered to be the first unification of physics, which is considered to be the first unification of physics. We have Hans Christian Ørsted, and he discovered that electric currents create magnetic fields by showing that an electric current produces a circular magnetic field as it flows through wire, which represented a major step toward a unified concept of energy. Michael Faraday, one of my favorites here, who had very little formal training. So most of what he picked up, I think he just picked it up intuitively. But he did his own research on electricity and magnetism and established that the electromagnetic field established the electromagnetic field. And that went on to James Clerk Maxwell. Maxwell was also a student of Faraday's, although they were about 40 years apart in age. But Maxwell did take a lot of what Faraday's research provided and added to it. He demonstrated that electricity, magnetic fields, and light move at the speed of light as waves. Maxwell's equation would later be proven by Heinrich Hertz, and he would be considered the second great unification in physics. Then there's Max Planck, considered the originator of the quantum theory, Planck constants, which provides the relationship between the energy of a photon and its frequency. And of course, we have Albert Einstein. He's our father of the theory of relativity, which allowed physicists to imagine an evolving dynamic universe. Before I go on to these other subjects, I also do want to mention that while Europe was going through a period of darkness, no thanks to the politicized Catholic Church, Europe might have been in darkness at that time, but Persia was actually a highlight in an age of enlightenment. So while these things over here are just starting to get worked on, the Persians were working on them long before. So I remember one of former, the late Mira Lee, who's a theosophist, one of my teachers. I remember her telling me that while the Europeans were being taught that the stars in the sky were angels holding up stars on sticks or lights on sticks, that the Persians had already pretty much graphed out the orbit of our solar system. I don't know how much of that has been verified, but Persia did have grand libraries because they're at a kind of an intersection between the East and the West. And so they made an effort to collect as much information as they could. And they were schools. These libraries were schools. They were there for translation. They were there for discussion. And so it's not surprising that at a time when Europe is just beginning their scientific revolution, that the other side is kind of diminishing in a way, not all the way, but it just feels like there's a wave moving of this desire to learn. So because quantum physics and classical physics can't answer the questions that are being posed today, especially due to the surprising discoveries of the James Webb Telescope, we do have some re-emerging ideas or changing ideas about the origin of the universe or about its natural existence. There's panpsychism, a theory that the mind is a fundamental feature of nature which exists throughout the universe. There's panspiritism, which proposes that consciousness pervades all of nature and is the source of the universe, seen and unseen. Here's a relatively new one, though. It's cosmic natural selection, which theorizes that each universe gives rise to new universes, its offspring, as part of a universal evolutionary process, and that black holes, like cosmic eggs, hatch new universes and play a fundamental role in the selection process. So basically, I guess in this theory, the black hole acts as kind of a refinery. So it's not only producing new energy, but it's refining the old energy. I'm not sure if I've got that right, but it's worth mentioning. And the Big Bang is changing now. And now they're theorizing that because of repulsive forces brought about by quantum effects of gravity, gravity being the new God, the universe will bounce back to an expanding one. An expansion or a big bang followed by a collapse, a big crunch, such as this is aptly called a big bounce. The bounce marks the end of the previous universe and the beginning of the next. I've seen a diagram of this, and it almost looks like a sine wave because it shows the expansion, and then it goes into kind of a singularity, and then it expands back out and into singularity. It does look like a sine wave. And then there's the multiverse, that different universes within the multiverse are called parallel universes or other universes or alternate universes or many worlds. And one common assumption is that the multiverse is a patchwork quilt of separate universes, all bound by the same laws of physics. So here's Heinrich Paz. He has written a book called The One, which I just finished, well, about a week or two ago. And he's saying that we can't really come to any helpful conclusions unless we first identify and accept the fact that we are all coming from, all of life comes from one source. And this is called monism. It's not monotheism. And I'll explain the difference in just a moment. Monism is the belief that all life, known and unknown, emerges from one source. It is the central belief of most spiritual traditions, as well as many philosophers, mathematicians, and scientists throughout the ages. The essential thesis among these traditions is that all life is one and interdependent. In other words, nothing operates in a closed system. Nothing operates in a silo. It is all interdependent and connected. I'm going to read just a brief couple of paragraphs from his book. See if I can read in the light here, so you can hear too. At the verge of quantum supremacy, the moment where quantum computers outperform classical computers, the real hardware of quantum computing remains a mystery. 120 years after Max Planck's original quantum hypothesis, there is still no consensus about what quantum mechanics actually is about. If this book is right, quantum mechanics deals with the one, an ancient philosophical concept that integrates all that possibly could happen. A 3,000-year-old idea that has accompanied humanity from its earliest steps through its darkest ages of science denial and religious persecution, in some of its greatest cultural accomplishments, all the way to the development of modern science and quantum gravity. But what exactly is the one? What is recorded on the cosmic film roll? And here he's referring to, when he says film roll, excuse me, he's referring to something like Plato's Shadows on the Cave. Only in this case, he's using the analogy of a film roll being displayed, on a screen, and everyone's focused on the screen, but we need to look and see where that light's coming from, its source. So that's what he means by film roll. Okay, where did I leave off? If it stores everything that could possibly happen, are these possibilities logical possibilities, meaning that the properties of the one turn out to be self-evident, or a more constrained set of physical probabilities? And what is the film roll or the projector itself? Is the one material? Is it spirit or information? Is it math? None of the above. Or is it none of the above? There is no easy resolution yet. All of these positions have their advocates. We are in an awkward situation. On one hand, as quantum computing pioneer David Deutsch has urgently appealed, we've got to understand this thing, because otherwise, in every fundamental branch of physics, it's as if we were planning an expedition to the moon while still thinking that the Earth is flat. Yet, on the other hand, as the philosopher Galen Strawson lamented in the New York Times, physics tells us a great many facts about the mathematically describable structure of physical reality, facts that it expresses with numbers and equations. But it doesn't tell us anything at all about the intrinsic nature of the stuff that fleshes out this structure. And just on a personal note, when it comes to the Big Bang, and I think a lot of other people have expressed this dissatisfaction because they don't explain what came before, and they almost have a doomsday attitude about what comes after. That through entropy, everything is just going to keep expanding out until no forces are able to operate. And then what happens? Does nature just commit suicide? It doesn't explain anything. And that's what I think they're talking about here, is about the intrinsic nature of the universe. It's not committing suicide. So we need to find, and energy cannot be created or destroyed. So you can't deny your own basic understanding of what physics is. So anyway, that's one reason why looking to this monism is so important. And again, monotheism is a little different, because monotheism states that there's a God that's separate from nature and man. Here, nature is God, and we are that. I'm going to end this segment as we transition into theosophical writings, just with this lovely. I didn't know that Carl Sagan had this in him. I think in his age, as he aged, he became a wise man. He writes, "The cosmos is within us. We are made of star stuff. We are a way for the universe to know itself." So beautiful. So here we have a quote from HPB and Secret Doctrine. And Shobha, are you around? Can you hear me?
I am. Yeah, I can hear you. Sure. Not merely a force. Electricity, magnetism, sound, light, heat, cohesion, etc. Occult science defines all these as supersensuous effects in their hidden behavior and as objective phenomena in the world of senses, the former requiring abnormal faculties to perceive them. The latter are ordinary physical senses. They all pertain to and are the emanations of still more supersensuous spiritual qualities, not personated by, but belonging to real and conscious causes. To attempt a description of such entities would be worse than useless. Men of science may term them force or forces generated by matter or modes of its motion, if they will. Occultism sees in the effects elemental forces, and in the direct causes producing them, intelligent, divine workmen. The intimate connection of those elementals, guided by the unerring hand of the rulers, their correlation, we might call it, with the elements of pure matter, results in our terrestrial phenomena such as light, heat, magnetism, etc., etc. The Secret Doctrine, Volume 1, pages 145, 146.
Thank you, Shobha.
Welcome.
It's interesting to note that Mr. Michael Faraday and James Clerk Maxwell here basically stated the same thing. Faraday concluded that the divisions between the various kinds of electricity were illusory. Instead, he proposed that only a single electricity exists, and the changing values of quantity and intensity or current and voltage would produce different groups of phenomena. And this idea that he proposed in his day was very much against the scientific opinion of the time. But Maxwell carried on. Again, Maxwell is Faraday's student. Maxwell said that the agreement of the results seemed to show that light and magnetism are affections of the same substance, and that light is an electromagnetic disturbance propagated through the field according to electromagnetic laws. He was the first theorist to actually describe electricity, magnetism, and light as different manifestations of the same phenomena.
Mm-hmm.
So he's able to take the work of Faraday and actually build on it. From the Secret Doctrine Glossary, electricity is defined here. Theosophy regards electricity not as a mere effect, but as an entity or cosmic force, named Fohat, also spoken of distributedly as the sons of Fohat. In correlating electricity with these cosmic forces, we find the term given either to one great energy from which the others differentiate, or to a particular one of such differentiation, such as Kundalini Sakti, which is characterized by spiral or serpentine motion and is thus related to electromagnetic phenomena. Although Kundalini might better be called vital electricity or magnetism, for electricity and magnetism are alter egos. You know, I saw this picture and I couldn't help but thinking of the stanzas where it says, that Fohat is the steed and thought is the rider, because you have these two magnetism and these two poles that are moving about each other in a serpentine fashion, and their horses. So I didn't want to I wanted to pull some definitions of Fohat out of context and just have them listed here. There's a lot to be said about Fohat, and there's multiple definitions and various contexts in which they're defined. But I wanted to just post them here so that we could just read them, and maybe at some point, maybe today after the presentation, is sort of look at them and kind of get an idea of what's being the idea, the sense of what's being defined here. The son of Svabhavat, or the primordial mother-father. Cosmic vitality, behind which is the permanent cosmic intelligence, unfolding itself from homogeneity to heterogeneity. The light of Daivi Prakriti. Did I say that right? Daivi Prakriti, which is the synthesis of the 7 Shaktis. I should have you do this one, so Shobha. The ceaseless destructive informative power, the universal propelling vital force, the light of the Logos, universal electricity, the sun of the sun, the spirit of electricity, Eros, a living force created by will, the desire of Brahman. I should have an accent on the end of that A, and I'm sorry. Would anyone like to read this? Do you have any volunteers out there? Please.
If nobody, I'll help.
Thank you, Shobha.
Okay, this is Secret Doctrine Glossary, Fohat. Fohat, Tibetan Mongolian. from Pho Buddha Buddhi. Cosmic life or vitality, bipolar cosmic vital electricity, equivalent to the light of the Logos, Daivi Prakriti, Eros, the fiery whirlwind, etc. As the bridge between spirit and matter, Fohat is the collectivity of intelligent forces through which cosmic ideation impresses itself upon substance, thus forming the various worlds of manifestation. In the manifested universe, it is that occult electric vital power which, under the will of the creative Logos, unites and brings together all forms, giving them the first impulse, which becomes in time law. Fohat becomes the propelling force, the active power, which causes the one to become two and three. Then Fohat is transformed into that force, which brings together the elemental atoms and makes them aggregate and combine. Secret Doctrine, Volume 1, 109.
Thanks so much, Shobha. So she writes in the on page 109, 110, Fohat, running along the 7 principles of Akasha, acts upon manifested substance or the one element, and by differentiating it into various centers of energy, sets in motion the law of cosmic evolution, which, in obedience to the ideation of the universal mind, brings into existence all the various states of being in the manifested solar system. And here, I probably should have deleted that, but and in the words of Subarao, he writes that Fohat is the one instrument with which the Logos works. And I had to think about, when we go back to that the energy being the capacity, and electricity being the medium, and the goal or the object being action, that the Logos has to have a medium in order to act. It is the bridge by which the ideas existing.
Desiree,
I'm sorry? Okay, let me continue. It is the bridge by which the ideas existing in the divine thought are impressed on cosmic substance as the laws of nature. Fohat is thus the dynamic energy of cosmic ideation, or regarded from the other side, it is the intelligent medium, the guiding power of all manifestation, the thought divine transmitted and made manifest through the Dian Chohans, the architects of the visible world. Thus, from spirit or cosmic ideation comes our consciousness. From cosmic substance, the several vehicles in which that consciousness is individualized and attains to self or reflective consciousness, while Fohat, in its various manifestations, is the mysterious link between mind and matter, the animating principle electrifying every atom into life. This is from the SD Pro, page 15. So this is kind of a messy page. I didn't mean for it to look this way, but it ended up looking kind of strange. Shobha, do you want to read the stanzas here? These are from stanza 1 and 2.
Sure. Stanza 5. Number 1. Listen, ye sons of the earth, to your instructors, the sons of the fire. Learn there is neither first nor last, for all is one. Number issued from no number. 2. They make of him the messenger of their will. The Zu becomes Fohat, the swift son of the divine sons, whose sons are the Lipika, runs circular errands. He is the steed and the thought is the rider. That is, he's under the influence of their guiding thought. He passes like lightning through the fiery clouds, cosmic mists. B takes 3 and 5 and 7 strides through the 7 regions above and the 7 below, the world to be. He lifts his voice and calls the innumerable sparks atoms and joins them together.
Thank you. And then she writes in the comments for that particular stanza, this shows the primordial seven using for their vahan, their vehicle or the manifested subject, which becomes the symbol of the power directing it. Bohat called in consequence the messenger of their will, the fiery whirlwind. And I think messenger is key here because it does connect everything. So it's being the messenger. Anyway, as we go back to Sloka 2, I think it's interesting that it takes 3, 5, and 7 strives because those are primes within the number system and our first primes. And so if you turn to page 37 of the volume 2 of the Secret Doctrine, there's a circle there, kind of a Kabbalistic representation of the Sephiroth there. And it has basically just a number line that's been turned into a circle. It's taken the two ends of the circle and bringing them together. But if we look at the distance between, let's say, 5 and 6, we find the prime. Well, we find 1, which is the 1 from no number, or the number for issuing from no number. And then right after that, we have a distance between 4 and 7, which is your 3, a digital distance between 3 and 8, which is your 5, and a digital distance between 2 and 9, which is your 7. So we could kind of think, because this is type an emblem or a structure of the Sephiroth, kind of showing how the numbers relate to each other, that the numbers in between numbers are very, very important because they show the ratio of things. And so anyway, at some point when we work on numbers and some other presentation, we can kind of focus on this. So she mentions Jew, and I'm not even sure I'm spelling this or saying this right, but it apparently has other spellings. There's not much that I can find on Jew other than what's in the Secret Doctrine. I was able to find some notes that were collected by Mr. Sennett in some of his interviews with Master M. But what I was able to find was that Zhu is the one real magical knowledge or occult wisdom, which, dealing with eternal truths and primal causes, becomes almost omnipotent when applied in the right direction. Its antithesis is Zhu Mi, that which deals with illusions and false appearances only, as in our exoteric modern sciences. In this case, Zhu is the expression of the collective wisdom of the Dhyana Buddhists. And that is from the SD. Here are some of the notes on Zhu that I pulled from the internet that are based on those notes that Mr. Sennett gathered in his conversations with KH. Zhu becomes full hot when active, the active agent of will. Real knowledge deals with eternal verities and primal causes, the unreal only with illusory effects. Zhu stands independent of the belief or unbelief of man. Zhu Mi requires faith. It rests on authority. The law or adept alone possess the real, the mind being in rapport with universal mind. The law has made the perfect junction of his soul with the universal mind in its fullness, which makes him, for the time of being, a divine being, existing in the region of absolute intelligence, knowledge of natural laws, or Zhu. The profane cannot become a Dhamma, purified soul, for he lacks means of perceiving Shang, or cause, genesis, or the beginning of things. Everything in the occult universe, which embraces all the primal causes, is based upon two principles: cosmic energy, which is full hot or breath of wisdom, and cosmic ideation, tiankam, the knowledge of being about, giving the impulse to cosmic energy in the right direction. So I think these ideas deserve some study. Um, and I think this might be getting close to the end here. The atom and the Atman. As to the elemental atoms, so called, the occultists refer to them by that name with a meaning analogous to that which is given by the Hindu to the Brahma when he calls him Anu, the atom. Every elemental atom, in search of which more than one chemist has followed the path indicated by the alchemists, is, in their firm belief, when not acknowledged, a soul. Not necessarily a disembodied soul, but a jiva, as the Hindus call it, a center of potential vitality, with latent intelligence in it, and in the case of compound souls, an intelligent active existence, from the highest to the lowest order, a form composed of more or less differentiations. It requires a metaphysician and an Eastern metaphysician to understand our meaning. All those atom souls are differentiations from the one, and in the same relation to it as the divine soul, the Buddhi, to its informing and inseparable spirit, or Atman. And so at this point, I just have a kind of a summary. If I can find it here. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. And here it goes. I think somebody needs to be admitted.
No, I'll take care of it.
This is my summary. I already admitted them. The spectacle of the universe, its movement, oscillations, power, and phenomena have roused both curiosity and reverence in the heart and minds of humanity for ages. Electricity remains the enigma of physicists, the muse of poets, the point of meditation for the contemplative, and the perfect emblem for life itself. Whether it be dissected under a microscope or its vastness imagined through the roving eye of the Webb telescope, whether measured through classical means in four-dimensional space-time or through the imagination of quantum theorists and their efforts to find the theory of everything, all efforts are stemmed and fall short. As nature would have it, only a partial lifting of the veil can be given at a time. What we do know is that we live in a moving universe that bends and balances like smooth waters that mirror light. It reflects, refracts, and absorbs. In the words of theoretical physicist Lee Smolin, we live in a universe that is always changing, with matter that is always moving. It is the grand mover of all things and the catalyst for change. It is a conserver of energy, never losing the value of the message in transition. Even in death, when all appear barren and still, there is still work to be done. All is conserved, nothing is wasted. There is, in fact, no rest in nature. Its motion is pervasive and perpetual. In this dramatic and dynamic stage, energy is held in potential to be released for yet another performance in another grand cycle. Its performance takes on many roles. It is the heat, the friction, the light, the color, the sound. It is the affectations of cohesion, the persona of both attraction and repulsion. It is the intelligent vitality that connects and disassociates. Electricity is the connection between heart and mind, and the carrier of information throughout all systems, large and small, known and unknown. It is the lifeblood, excuse me, that feeds the heart, and it is the initiator of every heartbeat. It is the sensation that runs through the spine that precedes vision or warns us of peril. It is the static spark, the positive in search of its opposite. It is the fire of a lightning bolt, and yet as gentle as the scent of a rose. It is the tempest in a hurricane and the gentle breeze through the forest. It is a builder, sustainer, and destroyer, yet never losing its power in the process. It is the fire of the phoenix, precipitating all other elements and signifying the reunification of a new dawn. It is the charged neurons in the brain that light up in a fury dance, just as the earth, seen from a satellite against the darkness, appears on fire from pulsating activity, connecting ideas through synapses of its two hemispheres. Electricity, after all, is the great connector of all things, adhering each subject to its object. It binds the alpha to the omega, born from the bosom of its mother matrix of eternal love and divine thought. It is without fail their dutiful messenger. And at the very end here is a quote from the Upanishads that I think is really appropriate for the read today. Shobha, want to?
Sure. As is the human body, so is the cosmic body. As is the human mind, so is the cosmic mind. As is the microcosm, so is the macrocosm. As is the atom, so is the universe. The Upanishads.
Thank you. I'll go back. So I just want folks to kind of look at this, because this here on the lower left is, or the lower right, is the Earth via satellite, from the perspective of the satellite. And over here on the top left are those synapses that I was talking about in the brain. And I just have to say, they look almost exactly alike to me. Is everybody seeing what I'm seeing?
Yes, that's
Yes,
incredible.
I think everything's connected.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm
Yes.
going to undo myself here. Let me just stop share. If we need to get back, and just let me know.
That was very sublime and very brilliant and very beautiful.
Well, thank you.
Desiree. Just the way you just effortlessly piece together the microcosm with the macrocosm, the within, the without, the ancient and the modern. Very poetically connected, if you will. So you exemplified what you were talking about.
Oh, well, we're all poetic beings. I think that was one of the major points too, that we are of that. We're not just watching it happen, we're doing it.
Yeah. Will you take some questions and comments from the
Yeah,
group?
yeah. Oh, wow, it's 5:38. Sorry if I put anybody to sleep. Oh, it's gonna be that long. Judy.
I'm trying to. Yes, can you hear me?
I sure can.
All
Yep.
right. Wonderful presentation.
You.
Very profound. There's just one idea I have listened to so much about Einstein, Neil deGrasse Tyson, other scientists. Is it possible to ever develop a unified field theory unless modern science recognizes the soul of things, as H.P. Blavatsky said, because it appears that the quantum science is so different than the theory of relativity. There's no time in the quantum universe, and yet with relativity, time is a constant, although it may not as be a constant as they thought. I just wonder what you think about this.
Well, a lot of things are going to have to get re-looked at. You know, we talked about the sun. We talked about also a big thing is time, because if light can only go, I have a problem with light, the speed of light. I'm sorry. Because light has to go through many different mediums. And what they're doing is they're taking light in through I guess, what they would consider to be a vacuum. And I just don't know how they're testing the speed of light. Maybe somebody can feed into that. But in my opinion, if you've got different medium that light's got to go through, what is it going through? How is it being? If you don't have a field out there, what is it going through? But there's all sorts of questions that I have in my mind, just like with the Big Bang. And it puzzles me, and sometimes it irritates me. But time is another thing that we're going to have to think about in terms of how do things. I mean, I'm being affected by the sun right now, not 8 minutes ago. And in a field of where everything is tied together, there should be an affinity where things can happen, even at enormous distances, automatically through affinity. And so I have a problem with putting a number on that. I really do. Now, I may be wrong. I'm just letting you know I have a big problem with it. But that's just one of the things that I have a problem with. The problem with, and again, I'm not a quantum physicist. I'm not a physicist. I do terrible at math. The problem is, I think, is that we spend too much time at linear math. I don't know if that's the only math that we need in order to figure out universal properties. There's another kind of math that we can use. And that one deals primarily with patterns in nature. My problem with science is that they take things in isolation. You know, we talked about we're not in a closed system, but they treat it like we're in a closed system. And when you do that, you're looking at a property in a specific location, and you're looking at it from a particular perspective, which means you're getting an appearance of something. And then here's my other issue. I just learned recently that a lot of our equations are getting tested virtually. So I'm a scientist and I have an idea. I'm going to develop a formula that suits my idea, and then I'm going to compute that into a program, into my computer, to see if it works. That's what's happening. They're not looking at the universe. And this is why that James Webb Telescope is so important, because they can't program it. They have to look at it. They can't stick it into a little test tube. They have to look at it. And what they're seeing, they can't figure it out. It's not that they're unable to figure it out. They can't get out of their own echo chamber to figure it out, because all they're doing is rehashing the same old theories over and over and over again. And it's that's really putting a wrench in the works, and it's debilitating the science. They can't even, the people with the electric universe can't even get any funding. No one will pay any attention to them. They're called quacks. It's ridiculous in this day and age. But what I find very hopeful is that it's getting the attention of a lot of young people, because the math that they have out there, the calculations that they have out there, nobody understands them. It's like they develop them just so that they understand them. They can't even explain them, let alone explain the universe. They can't even really explain their own concepts in any kind of understandable way. So what's happening is a lot of people are just shying away from physics and wanting to understand the universe altogether. But what electric universe does is it unifies them. And it's so easy to understand. But it comes from a right hemisphere brained place. You know, when scientists get to the point where they can't think anymore, they end up like Carl Sagan. They go back to their childhood and they just look at the stars and wonder. It's that reverence that is the key to understanding not just the universe, but our relationship with that universe. And it may take another 20, 30, 40, 50 years for these ideas to kind of overtake all of that customized way of thinking. You know, when I see what's happening, it's almost like, you know, they try to study a wild animal by putting it in a cage. You can't study a wild animal in a cage and understand how it performs in the wild. You have to look at that animal and be very patient and be very humble and just be alert and take your notes and have discussions and be inquisitive and be open-minded. And the last thing you want to do is put that animal in a cage if you're going to study it. And I think that's what's happened with physics.
Sue Prescott would like to get a
Great.
question in.
Oh, wonderful. So Desiree, this was excellent, fascinating, just so good. And it's like your talk a while ago on motion. So keep these coming. When you get an idea, you just do it beautifully. It's just fabulous. And I just wanted to quickly comment that, you know, when you showed from the James Webb Telescope, the interconnectedness of all those galaxies, or else the start of galaxies, and then the light from the earth. Well, watching some of the shows on the plants and their network of roots underneath, or the fungi, or however. Anyway, that's also kind of similar to me. So anyway.
Absolutely. And Sue, I thought of the same thing. I'm so glad you brought that up, because yes, the interconnection, the network that's underground, and that's one of the reasons why I put the mushrooms up there. But yeah, trees, all plants, they communicate in families. And that's one of the things that Thornhill was talking about, that these are animated conscious entities, and they have families, these galaxies. And the same thing goes true with forests, because they communicate through an underground network. It's amazing how as above, so below, you know. Yeah. Thanks so much. Gosh. Glad you brought that up.
Judy, we're kind of out of time. Is it okay if we let Odd jump in there from the Netherlands, given that it's 2 a.m. there? No, I'm just kidding.
Hi, Odd.
Hello. I want to react on Desiree, her question from why is it possible that light is conducted through something, and the light waves are conducted by ether. There is no vacuum in between the stars or the planets. There is a very dense substance. Only for us, there is nothing. And Joop Smits gives an interesting presentation in my in Point Loma, in the Point Loma Association, or the Point Loma Blavatskijhuis Theosophical Society, and he explains that. He says sound waves are conducted by rails. A train is going on the railway, and you can hear the sounds when you put your ear, like Indians do on the railway. They hear the sound, they hear the train coming, and it's also with light. And he gives a very interesting presentation where he also says this kind of things. And I will set it in the chat if you agree. The link of the presentation. It is
Okay.
about metaphysics, and it's theosophic. It's a theosophic guy, and he's also a scientist.
Great.
Yeah, I noticed that there's a growing number of scientists that are actually going in this back into this direction, because the plasma field, I'll just call it the field, was very popular back in like the 19th, early 20th centuries. It's just, Albert Einstein came on the scene with his theory of relativity, MC squared, energy equals MC times the speed of light squared. Anyway, but then everything shifted after that. And even Einstein himself said he didn't have a lot of confidence in it himself. It was incomplete. And but he did have an opportunity, I guess, to complete it. But yeah, I totally agree with the fact that everything in the universe is, well, obviously, being a student of theosophy for how long, that everything is interconnected. It just makes more sense.
Yeah, of course. Okay, thank you.
Oh, somebody else had a hand up. Did Judy who had her hand
Yeah,
up?
Judy, you can go ahead. Well, you can have the last question because we're a little bit past time here.
I know. I took it down.
Oh,
Thank
okay. You didn't have a question?
Well, there are many questions, but too many to go into now. But thank you very much.
Sure thing.
Desiree, thank you so much for another wonderful presentation. And as Sue said, please keep them coming. See, that's what happens.
Thank you.
So,
Well,
hey,
thanks.
there's
And I want to say thank you to Shobha for being my backup there.
there she is. Yeah.
Problem, no
Thank you,
problem.
Shobha.
So, yeah, there's something's always very fascinating, the kind of the Janus effect of looking forward and looking backwards. And when Desiree spoke about humility, patience, wonder, reverence, and so forth, I'm thinking, that's like last week's presentation having to do with Guru Yoga and so forth. And then when Desiree showed that slide of the human brain, and then you have all the lights on planet Earth and so forth reflecting all these cities, made me think ahead to next week's presentation on what? The city.
The city.
So, and think about a city and how integrated a city is. And not just with the electrical grid, but just with all the human connections, all the relationships and so forth. So it's like they're all like these synapses just firing and so forth.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's the kind of the Janus effect of these presentations. There's always a reflection backwards and a reflection forward. And that's part of the whole continuity, the flow, you could say. Thank you all for coming. And Desiree,
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Enjoy your evening.